Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I guess Happy New Year too. Goodness gravy. So
Ooh,
if
yeah.
you haven't been on one of these before, these are our monthly Keeper Q&As. We're Jody and Erica from Hughes and Strong Consulting, and a lot of what we do is just help people get settled into their systems. So that is exactly what we're here to do today. So we'll start off with a little bit of a deep dive topic so that we can kind of get settled in. We'll share some kind of best practices and things that we've found along the way. And then past that, open fair game for questions, whether you want to know more about a new feature that just rolled out. There was a couple exciting ones over the last couple of weeks. So if you want to learn more about a specific feature or you're new to Keeper and aren't sure where to start, anything from there is fair game, including just sitting and listening and being a fly on the wall and listening for inspiration's sake, or in case there is something that you come across that you like and want to adapt yourself. So all fair game. We'll go ahead and kick it off with a little bit of a deep dive. And with this meeting, I wanted to kind of pull and just see, it's January, and that comes with all of its own stress. So I wanted to, if you guys will throw in the chat, whether you would rather personally go through a little bit about an onboarding process in Keeper. This is about the time of year where we all start getting more and more leads and clients coming in and those kind of things. So we can do a bit of a deep dive into that and kind of talk through. Or it's also 1099 season. So we can deep dive into some of the prepared 1099 report. There's a lot we can kind of dive into. We may have time for both, but I at least wanted to get a poll from everybody to see what might be the most helpful to start. So if you guys can kind of throw in your chat your own preferences, we'll go from there.
Ooh, onboarding is very popular.
Okay, so we'll probably start there. We'll make sure that we have some time. So we'll either loop back to 1099s. We can answer specific questions about that as well and those kind of pieces. So fair game from there, but we'll go ahead and start with onboarding since that seems to be a super popular topic. So Jody, you've got our demo open, is that right?
Yep, I can share.
Beautiful.
I can find it.
And welcome everybody who just joined. We are going to go through onboarding here for a little bit of our deep dive topic, and then past that, we'll roll into any other questions that we have or any other topics that we want to cover.
Okay. Erica, did you have anything specific or you want me just to roll from the top?
I can actually get us started and then feel free to kind of bounce with me.
Yeah.
So when it comes to onboarding, let's just first start with kind of a baseline and then we'll get into the weeds a little bit more. So at a base, when you're onboarding a new client, that in Keeper traditionally starts from when the engagement letter and invoice are signed. Some people in the group and in the community have started using it for leads, but traditionally, and Keeper is set up for after that engagement. So there's a couple pieces to note there. When you want to add a new client, it's super easy and up at the top. So I wanted to run through that really quickly. Sometimes people come into Keeper not understanding that you don't have to connect all of your clients initially. So I want to mention that especially as you're getting the initials set up, you do not have to connect them initially. And then here you can kind of go through, add in that client from either a template that you have. Those are specifically going to pull from the closed templates. So that's your full month end process that you can drop in when you initially create them. You can also copy them from none and just start from a blank space there. From here, you can also decide who on your team has access to that. And then from there, you're able to add another client. So that's kind of the initials of like, how do we add one just so that we're all starting on a fair level playing field. And we know that we don't have to connect it initially. And then past that, from there, Jody, do you want to kick it into kind of templates and walking us through some of the pieces that might help us actually start filling out that client?
Yes. So up here in your template section, right now, the way that Keeper is set up, we have project templates and we have closed templates. The project templates will allow you to include non-transaction questions as part of that template. So when you drop this template into a client, all the questions that are part of that template also get applied. So those will go into your client portal. The close template is all of the sections. So I can close those. So all of your closing sections, all of your non-closing task sections, those are in here. Questions are not part of this. And when you create that new client, the closed template right now is the only one that you can pull from. So if you're only wanting to do onboarding, you don't want any of your closing tasks or non-closing tasks to be pulled in yet, then you may want to start with one. Or if you have another, maybe like a sample onboarding client, you can copy from that client to be able to start it right away. An example of our onboarding template here. We've got it broken up into different stages. And within those stages, we've got some checklists going on. And then we do have a series of onboarding questions that we've got here. So if we drop this into that test client that we created, where are you? Down here. Click add to client. And we'll go back out to our list to find them. They're not on this view. So here's our test client here. And always remember, you can collapse sections so that you're only seeing what you need to see or what you want to see in that given moment. But here are those tasks. And then up here, you can see that we've got 12 questions in our client portal ready to go for that client. So from there, typically we would add our client contact here and send them that welcome email and introducing them to the portal, letting them know that their onboarding questions are there and ready to go.
Yeah, and Jody mentioned this, but I want to make sure that we're being super, super clear about this as well. That template will drop those into the client portal, but it dropping them in, even if you're adding that to an existing client who you already have a contact in here, dropping them into the client portal will not alert them. So that's why
Yes.
we either need to have either set up auto reminders on, or we need to send like a manual welcome invite to the portal, that kind of thing. So I just want to make sure, because that would be really easy to miss and say, oh, I've added a contact and I've added those questions in. I should be good. Why aren't they answering? So I want to make sure that that's not part of the disconnect if you get somebody who isn't answering.
Yes.
Deb, saw your hand raised. Feel free. You have a question?
So with that, just because you're in this screen, so if I want someone not to have the magic, oh, I should turn my video on. I don't want someone to have the magic link, but I want them to have a password. That's where you go and you actually do the under the actions. Is that accurate? And you send them a password link. Is that what you do? Resend password link. Is that how to get them so that they're not in a magic link, but in a password?
A great question. And I'm actually going to go check something real quick before I answer that. Because I know that that used to be the case. I'm checking our merge tag sheet here. So the portal passwords have been outdated. I believe Keeper has removed those, so I don't know that it's still available to have passwords. I think they moved it all to magic links. So if you send that reset, it might just be resending them the magic link.
Oh, so you can't do passwords anymore? It's only
Correct.
magic links?
Mm-hmm.
I think there is like two-factor authentication that has been
Yes,
added.
that
So
is
that
available.
is an alternative. And this may be something that on a case-by-case basis, you ask Keeper just to make sure it aligns with what you understand. So just want to put that in there. But two-factor authentication is possible here. And that's from
Yes.
your master settings.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
your
there
firm
is no,
settings.
okay, so that's what I did not understand. So there is no password. It's all magic links, but I can set up the
To our understanding, yes.
Yeah, at least what we know right now. I'll let everybody know in my follow-up if that ends up being different. But at least to our understanding, Magic Link, and then you can add on two-factor authentication for more privacy or anything like that.
From your settings under security.
Yeah, that's actually, we are doing 2FA just because we're doing tax stuff. So we're doing,
Exactly,
we're doing the
exactly.
extra level. But so, because I know some clients actually set up passwords already, so then they must have removed the password. So that'd be interesting, because so can we just quickly go look at the portal view, at the client view when they go to, oh no, it doesn't show that. Never mind.
It won't
It'll
show it
just-
there.
Yeah,
It will show the
I
login.
would recommend, especially if you have some clients that may have passwords, Keeper support is going to know a ton on that. And that's not me trying to deflect, but they're going to have a
no.
really good idea and be able to look in on your account to see what happened on those two. So
Yeah,
just
that's
a
fine.
suggestion on that front.
No,
Yeah.
that's great. No, that's wonderful. And I think I had one other question in that same area. Hold
Yeah.
on, I've had a Word document. Oh, nope, that's it. That was it. There's something else. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Kate in the chat said that new clients had options as of last month. So it may still be there for new ones. I'm checking my email to see if, well, actually I need to send myself that email to see if I get anything. All right, I'll let you know if it pops up with that, Erica.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So with this, let's just kind of backtrack. So we've talked about how to add a client and that you can connect or leave them unconnected. We've talked about an onboarding template, and this really gives you a baseline so that you can keep track of where you're at in the process, right? What's actually been done, what's still outstanding on the task level. And then that template can also drop in questions so that you can start your initial gathering and documents and everything like that in Keeper initially. And we also discussed that you need to make sure to send that client invite if you want them to be able to see those questions. So that's actually all I had on my list. Jody, do you have anything else on the onboarding side that you wanted to make sure to mention?
No, I think that
Oh.
that really pretty much covers it. Yeah.
Actually, one other piece. So if you can you go to info at the very top of this client? So sometimes when we're getting done with the actual sales portion of our workflow, and now we're kind of streamlining into fulfillment, we've got all of our engagement letter done, all of those kind of pieces. For fulfillment to be able to happen, sometimes we need to gather some of this data or at least enter it in so the rest of the team knows what frequency this is happening on, what services are applicable for this client, especially if you're working as somebody who has some help on your team, no matter what degree. This can be really helpful to make sure everybody's on the same page. So these are properties. There's some that come in Keeper. There's others that you can add if you want to have more complexity or have more information on the client. But I at least wanted to mention this section because part of Keeper is task management, like we talked about. Some is client portal, but part of it is also keeping track of the information on this client specifically. So this is one section that you can do that in. You can also add some client details so they're up at the top of the project. Is there if there's anything that you want to be upfront or make sure that everybody else on the team has. So that's walking through kind of properties and details, as well as that might be something you're doing as you're initially creating and dumping that information into Keeper.
Yes, excellent point.
Beautiful.
Are there any other questions
Yeah.
about the onboarding process or any of those pieces that you guys want to go into more? And if not, we will open up for other questions.
I have a best practices question around what are people doing with in the info tab? Like what goes in, what would you add to it as a property and what would people add as a note? So is it, so just curious if somebody has any best practices around how they're.
Absolutely. So Jody, if you can take us up to that, I'll give kind of a quick intro on that high level view, and then feel free if anybody else is using this to kind of pop in. So traditionally, those properties are kind of the quick pieces of info. These can all be seen from that client list. So you can create those saved views based off of these. So that might be why you might put it into here, or if you want to drop down or something like that. This is a really magical section to be able to do that. That's more like static pieces of information about the client or the project. Yep. And those are those drop downs there. So you can kind of fill in or make it easy to chug through. The details section is really special because it can show up on the close page.
Yeah, I
So
like
this
this
might be
one.
really easy, like tips about this client. Hey, please email both this person and this person. Those kind of quick pieces that you need to be able to preview on that close page, or even links, right? Because we can get into
Yes.
that later on down, and we can do hyperlinks in here. Personally, I use notes, and I see a lot of people using the notes section for client meeting notes. Now, this can come into play. We can get super creative with this if this is like Deb, I know that you're doing taxes. So if you want to write down all of the information and kind of dump it out of your brain for all of the taxes from last year after they're done or something like that, this is a really unique space to do it and keep it organized here. But a lot of times this gets used as a client notes for when you have those calls or you need to kind of quick dump any of that information, but still keep it attached to the project. Does that make that more muddy or clearer? Want to make sure.
No, actually, that was really helpful because I hadn't really thought about that the properties we could see on the front page and notes are
Mhm.
things that you wouldn't want to see on the front page. So that actually was probably the best. Yeah.
Glad to hear, yeah. Kate, you had a question about, can the notes section be made visible to the client? No. So the notes and anything in these properties are internal only. Now, the piece that I will mention, if you're trying to find some place to put something like that, where you can still have links or notes or anything like that that you want your client to see, is the resources portal within the client portal.
Right here. Yeah. So this you can put in for them to see.
And Jody, if you go to old
Yeah,
GC,
I was
it
just
actually
thinking
has a
that.
really good example. I did that earlier today. All right.
So once
if you go-
again, from your view, it's here in the portal resources tab. This is where you can edit this information
this is client
from
by client.
yep, client by client. And then from your, what am I doing? From your client view, we'll preview here. So your client's portal here, that will be this tab, and this is how they will see it.
This can also be, I've seen a lot of people have like a Google Drive that they've always used for recordings or meeting links or anything like that. So in order to not transfer all of that into Keeper, you could also add that shared Google link here. So it's all in the same portal and you're at least directing back to it. So just know that there's some options there. But hopefully, let me know if that doesn't answer that question, but that's a way to get kind of somewhere that you can keep some client notes that are visible.
Yep. Laura, go ahead and ask your question. I saw your hand raised.
Great. Yes. Okay. I'm very excited here. I can, so my question is this, I am new to Keeper. It's got so much functionality that I am lost. I'm paralyzed.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
I,
very common.
I love that it's got this tightly bound transaction, integration with QuickBooks. But as a solopreneur who's now getting big enough that I can't keep it all in my head, I need to have a dashboard view where I can prioritize my day and say, hey, Joe Schmo needs this by this date. The other one needs that by that date. And I'm struggling to figure out, how do you tailor a view to help me prioritize my tasks across my client base?
Beautiful question. And just know, I know that we both kind of mentioned this and chuckled. This is where a lot of us start. So give yourself a little bit of grace. It is totally normal to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, but also, so
Yes.
you're in a good safe
Good
space
company.
here. Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's all gobbledygook to me. Like, I just can't
Yeah.
figure it out.
All good. You came to
Yeah.
the right spot. We're happy to help with that.
I'd say one of the first places to help prioritize the tasks that you have, to help give you the data that you need to be able to sort and filter and narrow down. One of those is going to be due dates. So that's going to be key in being able to filter another list that I'm going to show you. So that's date driven. You don't have to have them, but it does come in handy. It's really helpful to have dates whenever you can. This star that is next to the tasks, these two have been turned on. The star being on means that it is a high priority item. You can turn it on or off by hovering over the line. So currently this one is off. Just click on it, turns it on, click on it again, turns it off. So those two are just a couple of ways that you can start identifying the importance of a task. You also have tags within your non-closing task sections. And these are all tools to help you be able to narrow down and filter. So if I come back out and go to my primary task list, this is where we can start filtering and adjusting the information that we see, because this screen is incredibly overwhelming because it's every task from every client, including firm tasks. It's all of it for every person on your team. So being able to filter this down and create saved views for yourself can really come in handy to narrow the view. And get you the information that you need to see right away without being distracted by all the rest of it. So on each one of these columns, you will see a filter button. And then up here, we have like quick filter buttons. So this is your due date one that's going to drive those. So if you have dates listed, you can put in there, okay, what's due today, or what's due today, or overdue. What have I missed? Due this week. So that helped me narrow this one down. I've got a couple different people in here. If I'm looking just for myself, I can click assign to me. And now I'm down to 2. So I had hundreds in there. Now I'm down to 2. You can also choose that high priority as a quick way to minimize the amount that you're seeing as well. So those are quick buttons up here in the top. But again, if you use the filter sections here, the filters on the columns here, you can create any number of saved views. So an example of that would be, let me see here. I've got payroll tasks as a saved view. Oh, and you know what? Since they made the change, I need to update the saved view. So I will do that later and not get you guys all confused. But you can come here to your section and say, okay, where are my payroll, or if you want to just go straight to tags, you can do tags. And if you have a payroll tag, you can select that and it will filter down. So I'm actually going to go ahead and update that. So by sorting and filtering, you can then create a saved view. Anytime you make a change to your view, let me just reset this. I'm going to go back to default. Anytime you make any sort of change, you'll get that window or that option to save the view. That'll populate as soon as you do some kind of filtering.
Okay. Okay. And yet this question for me is even larger than this. And I understand you can do filters and stuff. And yet I'm still back at, but wait a second. What can I put as a non-close? How do I organize?
Sure.
How do I start?
Yeah.
I just don't even know where to start. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. No, totally, totally. So if you're looking at the blank canvas of a brand new keeper, let's kind of take it from that vein. So initially, you're going to have to create some clients. These can be unconnected for now, but you at least need some shells to put tasks into, right? That's one piece of the puzzle. The other is we'll have to add in tasks. Now I want to break down closing versus non-closing, especially now that there's multiple non-closing sections. We'll cover that here in just a second. But at a base, you can add in single tasks per client. If it's client specific, you can go in here to your section and just hit add task. If you want to like have that brain dump effect, right? If you want to roll out a lot of your tasks that are going to happen across clients. So let's say the tasks that happen with month-end close that are going to happen for at least a huge chunk of your clients are going to have a lot of the same tasks. We would recommend going and creating a monthly close template. That way you can add in all of the pieces of that close, or I mean, you can even create a template for any of the other processes you do if you need to do payroll or onboarding, and those are the tasks you need in your client right now.
And
That's
then you
very
can
cool.
ta-
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
please.
And
You're
then you
good.
can, sorry, and then you can tag them with these color-coded tags that then help also sort as well.
Yep. So when it comes to this is a great segue into what's the difference here. So at a base, non-closing, easiest way to think about it is it's an area where we can create tasks that are going to be outside of the monthly close. So this can be a whole host of things from one-off tasks, onboarding, payroll, anything like that can be housed in the non-closing section, because here, because it's our dumping ground for anything outside of the close, we have a lot more flexibility here. We have tags, we have different recurrences. We can set these for daily, and those sorts of pieces. We can have one-off tasks here. So that's kind of really, really quick basic of the non-closing. Now, past that divider, anything into here, these tasks for December 2023, these are closing, right? So these are the closing area that has different sections in it. And this is going to walk through every single piece of the close. And this is where those transaction reports come in, right? Because they're part of our close as well. These will recur on their own with whatever frequency you have. So if this is a monthly client, they're going to recur next month when you start the next close. So I'm happy to dig deeper into that because that gets into the weeds for sure. But at a 10,000 foot view, those are kind of the two different sections, or at least how to think about them. We can definitely get more granular.
Great. Yeah, I needed that high-end view. Thank you.
Yeah, easy.
Another tip that we've often given is, like Erica said, go with your basic list that you know, okay, these are the must-haves. But beyond that, you can always just start with the tasks that are in here, built in here by Keeper. So the things that Keeper gives you right from the beginning are all these things in transaction review and payee entity review section. You've got your financial statements down in the final review section. You even have your account reconciliation that has your registers there. You can just start with this, because you're going to get so much of your work done just by looking at the built-in reports that they have given you. So this is always fair game too for where to start. You don't necessarily have to add anything in. You can just say, okay, for this client this month, I want to run through these and see what happens. What information can I get through? What data can I catch and collect and update through those?
Yeah,
Got
Deb,
it.
saw your hand
Okay,
raised.
thanks.
Yeah. Does that help, Laura? Just want to make sure we didn't need anything else on that.
It does, and yet, and then I also want workflow help, but let me move on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let us know. We'll either circle back to it or we
Yeah.
can have a side conversation about that, because we're definitely happy to help with that side too.
Absolutely.
The other thing I would just say is that there's also the firm tasks too. So if you get overwhelmed and don't want to do it by client, you can just jump in and just do a task. Sometimes I just literally do a brain dump in firm tasks so that I can literally just say, these are the things I need to do today. So, so that might
Yeah,
help.
that's a great mention there, because sometimes what ends up on our to-do list is stuff outside of client work that has to be done, right? So that firm task section is a really great way to organize your thoughts or have a section that will still show up on that master task list that you can brain dump into. I love that you mentioned that, Deb. Thank you. Okay. We got a couple questions in the chat, so let's kind of answer a
Yes.
couple of these as we're going. Lori, you had one that kind of ties in really well, so I want to make sure we answered yours. So you mentioned, like, can we go back to how these tasks were set up? So in answering Laura's question, we did talk about how you can add them on the client level or add them on the template level and drop that in. But Jody, do you mind giving us a visual of where that actual add task lives
Yes.
and looks like?
Yep. So when you're inside of your client here, any of these sections right there at the bottom is add task. Once you click it, it pops up with this so you can add that name. If you have a description or anything else you want to include with it, there's a secondary line, so it'll look like this. And then you've got your checklist available down below, and you can have multiple checklists. So again, you can add here, add task there. If you accidentally add something and you want to get rid of it, over here on the side is where you can delete it. If you have added it to the wrong section and you want to move it, you can do that. With the move, you can only move a task within the area that it's already in. So if it's in the close area, you can move it to any of your custom close sections. If it's in the non-closing section, then you can only move it between those. So just to let you know there. And then of course you've got your dates here that you can repeat if you're in non-closing. Down below, it's not going to show a repeat. So if we do add task to one of these, this is a custom close section. There's no repeat. It'll just, whatever date you put in here will be the same date every month or every
So
quarter, depending on how your
it'll refresh whenever
set up.
that close changes. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, moving, that would move it to your other sections within this area.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Lori, let us know if that doesn't help or if that opened up a whole new can of worms in your brain. We're going to go on to one other question, but feel free to let us know either in the chat or raise your hand if we need to kind of dig back into that. Deb, I did see your question about the mailbox. While we're on the close and kind of talking about tasks, let me answer one more and I'll come right back to that one, okay? Lisa, you had a question about reviewing how to organize sections in the non-closing tasks. So these are really, really lovely questions. And now we have lots more options in here. So Jody, do you mind taking a crack at that one to get us started?
My smile. I am so giddy about this new release. I have been waiting, pins and needles, waiting for this. So before we had just one general area, we could just dump everything in here. And now we have the ability to add more. The way that you add more is by coming up to your sections here and click manage sections. So if you're in a client, this is where you can find that. Otherwise, you can come up to your firm or your practice settings and come to the sections tab right there at the top. And this is where you can have a field day. You can add sections to non-closing. You can add sections down here to your closing areas. So you've got freedom in both to create. There is a pencil, so if you need to rename it, you can do that. There will be a trash can next to the ones that you're allowed to trash if you need to. You'll notice that the ones that are built in from Keeper, you cannot delete. So those are grayed out. From here, if you need to rearrange them, just grab, drag to rearrange how you'd like. The ones that are down here, and go ahead, Erica.
I was just going to mention really quickly on the ones that are grayed out that you cannot delete, you can rename those though. So if general just grinds your gears or one of the other like account reconciliation needs to change slightly based on the way that you talk about it, totally fair game. So just wanted to mention that like slight caveat there.
Yeah, thank you. The closing sections, so all the ones down below, those are fixed. They stay there. They will always be visible every month or every quarter, every close. All of these will be present. We now have a function up here where we can hide them. So if you want something to only show up periodically, make it into a non-closing section. And then you have the ability to hide and unhide those at the client level. So it could be hidden for some, but showing for others. Gives you so much freedom. So here we can add a test section. You can have it to be visible to all clients or hidden. And this is kind of your default. So for the bulk of your clients, do you want it to be shown or do you want it hidden from the get-go? I'm going to show this one. So we've got our testing, and then we also have these other 3 that I put in previously. So now let's go into our client here, and you'll already see that that testing one automatically populated and is visible for you to see. And you can add your tasks, start moving forward with that as you'd like. You can also see down here, nicely hidden, so it's not distracting, that we have 3 hidden sections. So if I click that, it'll show me those sections. I can expand them. I can add tasks to them. And then once I don't want to see them anymore, I can hide them here. If I want one of these hidden sections to be more visible on a regular basis, then I can just come over to the 3 dots and make section visible. Again, you can do all of this at the client level, so every client can be different. So if you do that, moves it up here, and now I can collapse those hidden sections. I'm going to pause here. That was a whole lot. What additional questions do you guys have about this newfound freedom that we have in Keeper?
I can also go through some examples because I know sometimes when they roll out a new feature, it's like, okay, this is really cool, but like,
Yes.
how would you use it? Like, can you get my brain started? So Deb, seems like you have a question. Feel free to kick us off.
So the question was, we can move within non-closing any task, but can move to a different non-closing section.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I would heard that correctly.
Yep,
So that's
absolutely. We can move within those same areas. So we were able to do that with closed tasks. Now we can do that with non-closing. Again, it stays in those areas. But
Makes perfect sense.
absolutely. Yep. And again, that's just like these tasks function the same. We have tags, we have
Yep.
the recurring date, we have all of those pieces that we have in non-closing. We can just move them between sections now. It's really, really lovely.
That's helpful.
And the same thing as our original general one. We've got the due soon, due later, and completed. This is still due soon is still within 7 days. And then due later, of course, is everything beyond that. So people were asking for some additional cases, like what else would you use this for? So you can see that I've added in here quarterly tasks that I only want to show up once a quarter. So every quarter I might make it visible so that we can use it. Year-end tasks, I've got those set up in here. Looks like I've doubled up on them. Tax and 1099 can also be another section. It's really a playground for you guys. Payroll would be another popular one that has come out here. We used to have to get creative with how we did some of our payroll tasks because we didn't want them to get lost in the general. But maybe they happened more frequently than once a month. So we had to get very own section and have the recurring dates as frequently as you need them to be.
Yep, and a couple of other examples that I saw in the group that I want to just throw in for some inspiration are just like Jody did, we can have this section be specifically miscellaneous tasks for those one-off, those random admin things, a really good place to keep those organized and out of the way from maybe your other users on the team. We can also adjust this for client-specific pieces. So we've commonly had a closed section, so it recurred every month, that helped us gather, make sure that we had all of the journal entries or pull this person's payroll hourly sheet or those kind of pieces. But we can now.
You okay?
Yeah, I froze there for a second, sorry. But we can now have a client specific section that is kind of keeping track of those really important things for this client that may be kind of unique, out of the norm, anything like that. So wanted to mention that there as well. One other kind of unique case is this. If you've been an Asana user before and you really loved the organization of daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, this is now an option. monthly will be at the end because the closing section is always at the bottom. So keep that in mind. But if you are one of those that absolutely loved that in Asana and now your brain is trying to rewrap itself around organizing by type instead of the frequency, this is a whole new playground to play around with. So just wanted to mention some of those other use cases that get a little bit more creative or ethereal.
While we're in here, I wanted to also point out that you can copy non-closing tasks. So if you click on that, it'll pop up with here, and you can to do all of it. But no, I haven't set one up yet. But you can choose your client and then you can choose to add them in here. All right, just checking the comments section here.
Yep. Kate, would it be better to put an onboarding in the general section or make a separate section? I think this is a really great question. It kind of depends on how the rest of it is organized. If you have all of your payroll tasks still in general, I personally would probably filter those out so that they didn't get lost in that. But a lot of times, if we create other sections for other tasks, that general might be a great place for all of your admin or onboarding or one-off tasks. So just kind of depends on personal preference there. But I have seen, like Ben's example was doing an onboarding that then you could hide and get it out of your way when you're done. So either way, but there's a little bit of like behind the scenes on what either of those, why I would choose either one of those if that helped.
These are great questions, everybody.
Okay, I do want to make sure, Deb, you had a question about the mailbox. I don't want that to get too lost. So let's pop to that next, and then we'll
Okay.
continue. Lisa, I did see your question in there as well. So we'll keep chugging along.
All right, Deb, what was your specific question about the
So,
chat?
no, I don't understand the mailbox. I don't know why, but
This?
when I go in there, my brain goes, what the hell? It just doesn't make sense. And so just walk me through how you're supposed to use it, because my brain just like, I don't know, when I get messages from my staff, I said, nope, don't use it because I don't like it. And so help me so that I like it, because I want to get out of email, and I think keeping it in Keeper is a better option than emailing. But I don't. So if you can just start from how do we tag
Yeah.
someone, how do we, and then go and answer the tag, and just walk me through the steps so that I know I don't want to use it because I don't like it. I'm hoping that I
Right.
like it.
Absolutely. So just for context for anybody that's
Yes.
newer inside of Keeper, this is internal communication. So this is not communication with your clients. This is with your team. So just wanted to make sure we were all on
Yes.
clear footing there.
And they're not visible to your clients either. This is all internal. So, okay, there's several places where you can have a chat, but you'll see chat bubbles.
Mhm.
On every client, you have comments at the top.
Oh, so you can do both. You could do it at a client level as well as a task. Okay, cool.
Yes, yes. And then if you were to go back out, and if you were in your firm tasks, there's another one. So it's separate from client. This would just be just general under the firm tasks section.
Can we do one of each then? So I can see what they look like.
Oh, sure. Let's go back into this one then. All right, let me see what I have. Let's do team fun. Dance party at 3. Okay. So at Ben, let's get him involved again. Don't forget. So if I mention somebody, it's going to flag them. So he's going to wonder what is happening when he gets an email in a bit about this. For Ben, this would populate up here as well. Here, this is something that I have directed. So this is an open item, essentially. If I mark it resolved, then it'll go into the all. It will no longer say open. And then there's also unread. So the unread is going to be what's coming to me that I have not seen yet. And you can also go to the actual firm task, and it's going to bring you back to this. Kate, I'll test that in just a second. And it'll pop up the window right here over that task. So before these wonderful updates, we would get a notification that said, hey, here's a comment. And then you'd go to the close and you'd have to search to figure out where the red bubble was to know, okay, which task was that on? What section was that task in? Now it will bring you directly there with the chat open, with it open.
Nice.
So let's go to the client and we'll do the same thing. We all disliked that. Okay, so we're gonna let me see what happens if I choose myself. Comment. So now I can see both. They're both still open. It's not going to be unread because I'm in my own. So it'll flag it, so you'll still see it, but it's not going to bring up that red dot or bring it up to make it brighter for you there.
And then
from here, you can click on it to open, and you can reply right here. You can do a thumbs up. You don't need to respond. You can do that. You can mark it as resolved. If you need be, you can reopen it.
nice.
So now that's, well, it should say all.
It actually has way more functionality than when I first.
Unread, and then everything that's before or that has been resolved be there.
Nice.
Yes, marking it resolved. I believe marking it resolved resolves it for everyone. I have not tested that out to know decisively. So we can, Erica, we can put that on our list as well to follow up with. Does that help with the mailbox
Yes.
question?
Yes, that's
Excellent.
very good.
Let's see.
Okay, so rocking right
About 10 minutes
along.
left.
Yep. So, Laura, you had a question about the weekly list. Like, how do you get a list of all of your tasks, both closing and non-closing for the week? That's, we would go back to that task list and we would filter. That one has a really easy, quick, filter on it up at the very top.
Right here by the due
great.
date.
Like you showed me before. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. That's the best way to go for that one.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely, no problem at all. Okay, let's see. Oh, Cindy had a really quick question. So can you move default tasks like duplicate vendors to a quarterly task list? So no, that one's gonna have to stay. Any of those keeper default reports cannot be moved to another section. Those ones have to be static. We can delete them if we don't want to look at that report for this individual client, but we can't move those around in sections, unfortunately.
So you can see here, delete is the only one that's available. And if you do delete a keeper report, so if I remove that, I can come back down here to add report and add the keeper task. it'll bring it right back for me. You will lose your checklist though, if you
Checklist.
had checklists underneath that before. Deleting it will remove that, but then you can add it back in.
Yep, hopefully that helps Cindy on that front, but let us know if you have
Yeah.
additional questions on that. Moving back a little ways, Lisa, I know you had a question about how to use Keeper for projects and cleanup. So Jody, if you don't mind kind of approaching that at a broad angle, and then Lisa, let us know if you have more individual questions as we go.
Yeah. So I always start with a template, especially with these, since they pop up once and then it'll be another new client coming through. So I've got a project template created here. It's called my cleanup guide. I've got that broken down into sections as well. Very similar to the onboarding process is how I do a project or one-off cleanup. In here, if I needed to, I could have specific questions for the cleanup as well. And then I would simply just add this to my client. And then from there, it would be within my, I think we have it in here. Do we? No, let me add it and then you can see. So my cleanup guide. I'm going to add this to my client. Go down to the client. Here we go. So I've hadn't cleaned out the old the old template, so you'll see that it's duplicated. And that is something to keep in mind when right now when it comes to project templates. If you add it to a client and then maybe you forget and you add it again, project templates do not overwrite one another. It will duplicate it. So you will have two of the same template in there, as you can see here. I hope that helps to answer the question. Let me know if you have more specifics about projects. I know some people with projects, they will connect it for doing that project and then disconnect when the project's over, which opens up another whole discussion about connecting and disconnecting, which we don't have time to get into today, but we could definitely dive deeper into that next week or next month if people would like.
You can disconnect from QuickBooks now?
There is a method in which you can do that. Yes.
It's a bit of a workaround. It is not
Yes.
like
It's
this
not
is a way that
seamless.
you can do that. Like there are some kinks with that, but it is possible.
Yeah.
So let us know, Deb, if you have anything that you need to talk through. We're happy to kind of go into more detail because it's a little bit of a weedy conversation, but it is possible.
Yes.
We'll say it that way.
And then, but they still haven't done the archiving feature yet.
Not yet.
Correct.
That's why we had to come up with a bit of a workaround behind that, right? Is because you needed something. So happy to discuss that further. We're just kind of all waiting until that archiving is out because that's going to be a lot less, less in the weeds and a lot less.
And
Oh,
I
yeah.
have too many things on my plate already, so we'll wait.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll tackle that here once that update makes it easy.
Yeah, perfect. Lovely. Lovely, lovely.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left. Is there any last minute questions, Erica, that we can answer real quick?
Oh goodness. If we don't, I either feel free to stay on if you have a couple minutes, or I will look through the chat log and email you individually if we don't get to it. So just putting that out there for anybody that doesn't get addressed.
Yes.
Totally happy to circle back. Let's see. So the questions associated with specific tasks, will they auto-populate into the client portal? So that's one piece to just understand that those are separate in your brain and in Keeper. So the questions on a task that you're asking and you're tagging back and forth or anything like that, that's an internal chat with you and anybody else on your team, or you and yourself if it's just you. Now the client portal questions can be added. I just want to make sure that that's separate in your mind, because any of the questions that you're asking with tags with tags or the chat on a task, there we go, is not going to be visible to your client at all. So just want to paint that picture a little bit clearer because it's easy to get mixed up on. Hope that
Yeah.
helps,
Thank
but feel
you.
free to let me know if not. Yeah.
And real quick, while we were talking about it, if you want to receive notifications via email, when you get those internal chat comments, you can do that from your user settings. So if you click on your image up here, you can turn that on or off. Same thing with your daily digest emails. This is where you can turn those on and off based on your preferences. All right.
Looks like there were a couple of questions about what stays if we disconnect and stuff like that. So feel free to stay on. If we want to talk through that a little bit, I can also email individually. I know that this is a crazy season. So
And like
don't
I
feel
said,
like
we
you
can
have to
dive,
stay on.
we can make that our highlight point next month.
True. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So if there's any last minute, feel free to unmute yourself. Otherwise, feel free to kind of shuffle out when it makes sense and feels natural for you. Really appreciate you coming. We have
Yes,
these
thank
each and every
you.
month. So our next one is February 21st, always the third week in the month, so that we can all get through close before we even have to think about all the questions that just popped out from close. But past that, let us know if you have additional questions in between then and now, and we're more than happy to help.
Thanks, everyone. Great questions today.
Beautiful. All right. Anybody that's staying or has a few more minutes, let me know if you have a specific question that you wanted to stay on to ask and you just didn't get a chance, or if you were staying on for that disconnect conversation. Either is fair game. Just want to make sure we're not missing anybody. Yep, I will absolutely send the recording out. So may take a day or two to process, but anybody that joined this or that's on our email list, I'm more than happy to send the recording and any resources that we have that might accompany some of the conversations or some of the sections that we talked about. So absolutely, that'll be sent out here later in the week. Yeah, you're so welcome. Anybody else? Kelly, this is a great question. So heard you on wanting to talk about disconnect. Really quickly on your question about, can you move firm tasks around from section to section?
Yeah.
My current understanding
I believe that's
is
going to be yes.
Is it?
Now with it, we're going to test it, but
We'll
I
keep our
believe
fingers
yes,
crossed.
in theory,
We'll
based
see.
on
Some of the updates that they did with the non-closing
yes.
section. Let's see.
No.
Not quite, looks like. So this was, I'll make
Because
sure
it
that this
is
is
separate.
on Keeper's radar. Because now that that's built into the non-closing section, because these work similarly, Keeper might be able to easily
Yeah.
add it to this section. But because that was not available for either section up until last week, doesn't seem like that's built into the firm section quite yet. So we'll make sure it's on there. I know, I'm so upset about it too. So we'll definitely make sure that that's on their list. And we kind of put that plug in there.
Kate, feel free to unmute if you want to ask your project template questions.
So I'm also using this for tax, and there are like sets of questions, and I don't want to like blast new clients or, at the tax year with everything, and they don't need
Right.
everything. So like because my template section, I'm doing these all like test things right now, but how is there a way then that, I'm having an admin for the first time this year as well, that, I want to have them have permission to, send this new set out. Like, do I just create them as sets and like just be kind of intentional in my naming?
I have seen a
that-
lot of people break down the onboarding process into a phased thing. So you have onboarding phase 1, that's the initial questions and the initial tasks, onboarding phase 2, onboarding phase 3. That is a workaround because right now we can't schedule those to go out at different times, but that's the best way I've seen to keep those organized and be able, especially if you're having an admin, like, okay, this one's ready for phase 2. Can you go drop that in? Makes it at least a little bit easier.
Okay,
Yeah.
that does help. And I mean, we can create projects with only client questions and no actual additional tasks, correct? Or,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Just hit add
exactly.
new and add question.
And that way
Cool.
it'll just
Okay.
drop it into the client portal. Now, just a heads up, you will, as you drop in like phase 2, they're already going to be a contact in the client portal. So you don't have to send them the invite, but you
Right.
will want to make sure that auto reminders are on, or that you send a manual, hey, there's new questions in the portal as your admin is doing both of those, because I don't want those questions to be missed when you
Mhm.
add them in. But that's the only piece there, is understanding that it'll drop them
Mhm.
in. It won't alert the client, right? So
Right.
just want to make sure that that's super, super clear, but you can totally do a template that just has questions, that just has tasks, or that has a blend of both. Absolutely.
Yes.
And then they're numeric, or like the alphanumeric
Yes.
in
Yep,
ordering.
exactly. That's why
Yes.
that's why we put the numbers in front, is that's
I
how they're
see.
organized in here. So that way you can create your own custom organization structure, whatever
Right.
makes sense for you. But yes,
Yeah.
those use alphanumeric. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
And I will
Oh,
say you can use emojis as well.
Can
if you
you?
want
That's amazing.
to have
yeah,
those
I
as
I wasn't
part of
sure about
your
this.
thing, those will be at the top. So FYI,
Lovely.
I'm all about the emojis.
nice, nice, nice. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Does that help answer your questions, Kate?
Yeah, that's a lot. I'm just sending the first couple of things out to, a select one or two to,
Yeah.
as the early birds are popping up.
As they're starting to
Yeah.
file in.
I'm
Exactly.
like, that's fine. You can do, we can start this, but just be aware, you're my test subjects.
Yeah, you're going to be a little bit of a guinea pig, so be nice. No, totally get that. As you're going through, email us if you have any questions. We're happy
Thank
to
you.
talk through that process as it gets a little bit more like in the weeds. Happy to help.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. So it seems like everybody else wants to stay for the disconnect. Feel free to pop any others in as we're going through. So Jody, do you want to kick it off? Do you want me to start? I'm open either way.
You want to start prefacing? That's fine. I've got our offboarding
Okay.
template here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, let us know if we get lost in the weeds. We can't stay on too terribly long, but I want to crack this open so nobody gets left with a weird random like, well, what happens, right? So we'll at least get the intro layer scratched on this. So when it comes to, right, we have connected clients.
Get QBO
Yeah.
open for you.
Awesome. We have connected clients, we have unconnected clients, but if you have a connected client and you disconnect them from the QBO side, that's a way that we have been getting around not having an official archiving process in Keeper. Now, quick background to make sure you understand at a base what's going to be possible once you with any unconnected client, so we can paint some parallels. We can have non-closing sections, as many as we want, any customs. We can have any custom closing sections that we want. The only thing that we will not be able to have, well, the major thing that we won't be able to have with an unconnected client is those QBO or zero reports. Those sections will show up, but they will say not connected or something like that and give you an error on those. So I want to kind of like add a base on the actual task level. That's what happens with any unconnected client. So there's going to be some similarities there. We can still use the client portal if you have an unconnected client or if you
Of course you
disconnect
left
your
off.
client. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, you're back.
Good gracious. Florida internet. Did I miss any, like, did that all speed up and actually come through, or did I cut off through?
It came through as a jumble. You said
Okay.
something about the specific tasks.
Okay, good. So,
In there.
we can still have sections and tasks. We won't have the QBO
Keeper.
integrated reports. Yep. Or, and we still will be able to have the client portal. So just understand that we can still have a lot of those options. We're going to lose that basic connection to QBO, which means our reports won't show up, and we won't have transaction questions because it doesn't have anything to pull from. So that's at a very, very, very big base. But Jody, feel free to kind of like dig into some of the more weedy pieces as it feels like it makes sense.
Do you happen to remember, we have that test document where we wrote down everything that stays, everything that gets hidden. I want to say it gets hidden because
that's a
we
good way to
did
say
test all this out, and when you reconnect them, everything is there. Everything. At least we did not find anything that disappeared. So your tasks, if you had transaction questions inside the portal at the time that you disconnect them, when you reconnect them, those questions are there. And all that information was there. The files, you could open those up. Same thing with the vendors. That was what we were really testing out, was the 1099 section as well. When you disconnect, that 1099, prepare 1099 area empties out. It's not available. You can't click on it because it's, integrated with the software. But when you reconnected them, all of that was there, including the exclusion list that might have been present, any notes, if you directly input client or the vendor contact information, if you add that into the system via Keeper, it, in theory, like it goes to QuickBooks, but it does stay in Keeper as well. So that stayed. What were the other things that we highlighted specifically that was like some of the key things that people were nervous about losing?
Yeah, I've got this kind of pulled up just out of baseline, but out of base, those transaction questions were one that we talked about. The non-transaction questions stay. They're not affected with that disconnect or anything like that. Client uploads are fine. Vendor requests and any of the information is all still there. So that's just something to understand. This does get a little bit weedy, and we're happy to go into a little bit more depth or do a separate training just on this. But I honestly, if I'm putting my consultant hat on, my best suggestion would be to, if possible, that archiving should be coming out relatively soon. So if possible, I would wait until it's possible to actually dump those off and have Keeper's way of actually getting some of that information out of it or disconnected, so you're not worried about it. But it is a possibility to do in the background to disconnect them from the QBO side to retain some of that data, or at least hold it inside of Keeper.
Yeah. One really big question that comes up with this. So I've got QBO here open. You can see that, correct? On top of Keeper? Okay.
Actually just Keeper right now.
You can only see Keeper?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me stop and reshare so you can see my whole screen. Okay, now can you see both? All right, so within QuickBooks, you'd come down to your apps. These would be the apps that your client is connected to, and you would disconnect here. This allows you to disconnect them without deleting them from Keeper. However, you will still be charged, and you will still have a notice at the top, or every time you every time you open that client, that says, please reconnect, please reconnect. In order to stop that and get that disconnected kind of style to that client, you have to request the disconnection from the back end directly from Keeper. So if you just come down here, start a new message and request, I need such and such client disconnected from the back end, they can do that. And then that would take them out of your total for connected clients when it comes to charging you month to month.
So it's kind of cracking the surface. from
Yeah.
here, feel free to unmute yourself. We don't need to do like a chat or anything like that. Either raise your
Formal
hand
thing.
or unmute yourself at this point, and we're happy to kind of like talk about some of those off cases or anything like that. Want to make sure you walk away with less confusion, not more.
Right. Hearing crickets.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Feel free to email us at info@hughes, HUGHES, and strong.com. And we are more than happy to kind of dig in the weeds, brainstorm if you have something that you need to set up in Keeper, but it's not within the feature set or anything like that. We're more than happy to help. Otherwise, we will be sending out the recording and any resources that we've referenced here by end of the week. And then we will see anybody who's available next month, same time, same place, on the 21st. So thank you all for your time today. I
Right.
hope you have
Thanks,
a lovely
everyone.
rest of your January, and talk to you soon.
Bye.